In the quiet, idyllic town of Brookhaven, the kind of place where everyone knew everyone, nothing ever seemed out of place. Nestled between towering oak trees and gentle hills, Brookhaven had a way of making people feel safe. The local diner was the heartbeat of the town. The streets were always quiet, and the most excitement came from high school football games or local gossip. But that all changed one fateful morning in November 2013, when Marissa Cole, the beloved owner of a small family-run gift shop, disappeared without a trace. Marissa Cole had lived in Brookhaven her entire life. She had inherited the shop from her mother, and before that, her grandmother. Cole's Gifts was a staple of the town. The tiny storefront, with its old wooden sign and dusty shelves stacked high with handmade trinkets, candles, and local art, was a reflection of the town itself. Warm, welcoming, and charming. Marissa was more than just a business owner. She was a friend, a confidant, and a neighbor. She had a knack for remembering the smallest details about the people who walked into her shop, whether it was their favorite type of tea or the birthday of their grandchild. Everyone in town loved her, and she seemed to be the kind of person who would never hurt a fly. On the morning of her disappearance, the shop was found eerily quiet. The door was locked from the inside, the cash register was still on the counter, and a half-empty cup of coffee sat cold beside the counter, just where Marissa had likely left it before stepping out the back door to run errands. There were no signs of forced entry. Her keys were still hanging on the hook behind the counter, and her purse remained untouched. It was as though she had simply vanished. At first, the police didn't think much of it. She probably just went for a walk, took a break, or had some personal business to attend to. They thought. She had always been a little quirky, and sometimes she took impromptu trips to nearby towns or disappeared for a few hours, catching up with friends. But as the hours turned into a full day, and then concern began to mount. Marissa was always punctual, and her family knew something wasn't right. The town was small enough that everyone noticed her absence. The local cafe owner, Linda, called the police when she realized that Marissa hadn't shown up for their usual morning chat. Marissa's husband, Greg, who worked as a mechanic down the road, was immediately worried. They'd had a good morning before she left, and there had been no signs of trouble. But then, the police found something unexpected. A partial set of fingerprints on the back door of the shop. They were smeared, as if someone had tried to wipe them away in a hurry, but they weren't Marissa's. The small-town police force was quickly out of their depth. Detective Claire Harper, an experienced investigator who had grown up in Brookhaven but returned after working in a bigger city, was assigned to the case. Her first thought was that it might have been a random robbery gone wrong. Brookhaven had always been a safe town, but not entirely free of crime. There had been the occasional burglary, and a few years prior, a man had been caught selling drugs to teenagers. Still, no one had ever been abducted. But a robbery seemed like the most logical explanation. Marissa's shop wasn't big, but it had valuable items like antiques, jewelry, and rare collectibles. Whoever had taken her might have been trying to get away quickly and took her as a hostage to avoid being seen. For the first week, the police worked under the assumption of a botched robbery. However, as the days passed, the more Detective Harper dug into Marissa's life, the more discrepancies began to surface. Marissa's bank accounts had not been touched, despite the fact that she usually had a small balance but didn't keep large amounts of cash at the shop. The lack of any ransom demands was also puzzling. In most abductions, the perpetrator would eventually contact the victim's family to demand money, but nothing came. The breakthrough came when Harper spoke with Marissa's close friend, Julie Martin, who had been one of the last people to see her before her disappearance. Julie had known Marissa for years, and her concern was palpable. She told Harper that Marissa had been acting strangely in the days leading up to her disappearance. She seemed distracted, Julie explained. She kept talking about getting a strange phone call, one that made her feel uneasy. She didn't tell me who it was, but she said it was someone she hadn't talked to in a long time. And then, the day before she went missing, she mentioned having a bad feeling, like something was going to happen. The cryptic comment stuck with Detective Harper. She began to wonder if Marissa had known something was coming, but had never been able to prepare for it. 2 weeks after Marissa's disappearance, the investigation took a dramatic turn. A local hiker, walking along the wooded trails near Brookhaven's outskirts, stumbled upon something that made his blood run cold. A blood-stained scarf hidden among the underbrush. It was Marissa's. The blood was still fresh. Harper's team combed the area and soon found more evidence. Footprints, a torn piece of clothing, and, most chilling of all, a half-empty can of pepper spray. It seemed clear now that something violent had occurred. At this point, the theory of a robbery seemed unlikely. Whoever took Marissa wasn't after money, they were after something else. After several weeks of painstaking investigation, Detective Harper learned of a possible connection between Marissa and a man named Daniel Pierce, a former boyfriend who had recently resurfaced in town. Pierce had left Brookhaven years ago after a messy breakup with Marissa, and according to sources, it had not ended amicably. He had been living out of state, but recent records showed that he had been in town just days before Marissa's disappearance. Harper brought Pierce in for questioning, and while he denied any involvement in her disappearance, his behavior was suspicious. He seemed unusually nervous, constantly looking over his shoulder during the interview. Most telling of all was the fact that Pierce had a history of violent behavior, including an arrest for assault a few years back. As Harper dug deeper, she found that Daniel Pierce had been stalking Marissa in the months leading up to her disappearance, sending her threatening messages under fake names. Marissa had never mentioned it to anyone, likely out of fear of bringing attention to it. Pierce had apparently been obsessed with her, unable to move on from their past relationship. It wasn't long before Daniel Pierce was arrested and charged with Marissa Cole's abduction and murder. He had taken her that fateful morning, likely intending to confront her about their past. But things had escalated. She had fought back, and in a fit of rage, he had killed her and attempted to cover up his crime. The evidence found in the woods, her scarf, bloodstains, and his fingerprints, were the key to his capture. The town of Brookhaven was left in shock. Marissa, the kind and gentle soul who had touched so many lives, was gone. The town had lost its heart. The news of her death shook everyone who knew her, and the sense of safety and security that had once defined the town was forever shattered. In the end, it was a small town's close-knit community that helped bring justice to Marissa. Her story served as a reminder that sometimes, even in the safest places, evil can hide just beneath the surface. If you enjoyed this story and want more gripping mysteries, true crime, injustice, and untold stories, hit the subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a new upload.